In the very heart of Eurasia, there's a land of almost unimaginable scale. A place of stark, beautiful contrasts, where gleaming, futuristic cities seem to rise right out of an ancient, endless plain. This is a story of survival, really, of an identity forged in the fire of empires, and of a nation now trying to chart its own course in a very complicated world. This is the story of Kazakhstan. To even begin to understand Kazakhstan, you first have to get your head around its sheer immensity. I mean, we're talking about the ninth largest country on the planet. This is a territory so vast it could swallow up all of Western Europe. It's the world's biggest landlocked nation, a boundless sea of land. But here's the paradox that defines just about everything. For all of its colossal size, Kazakhstan has one of the lowest population densities anywhere. It's a land of epic emptiness, where space itself is the most common feature. And this profound contrast, well, it's the real key to understanding its past and its future. So that leads us to the big question, doesn't it? How did this vast, seemingly empty land become so incredibly important on the world stage? How did its people manage to navigate the treacherous currents of history to build a modern, independent nation? Well, the answer really begins with the land itself and how it shaped a unique kind of spirit, an identity that's all about freedom and being constantly on the move. You know, the nation's identity is literally encoded right in its name. The word Kazakhs comes from an old Turkic root that means wanderer or free man. It's a name that just screams a history of nomadic culture and a fierce kind of independence. And get this, it actually shares its origin with the word Cossack. This wanderer's spirit was born out on the Kazakh steppe, the largest dry steppe in the entire world. Just try to imagine a plain so huge it feels like an ocean of grass, stretching to every single horizon. For centuries, this was the whole world for the nomadic tribes who learned to master its harsh beauty. And this is absolutely crucial. It was right here, on these steppes, that humanity's entire relationship with the horse began. The ancient bowtie culture was the very first to domesticate the horse. And that one innovation, well, it changed everything. How we traveled, how we traded, even how we fought wars. You could say this was the true beginning of the Silk Roads. But you know, a land this open and this strategic isn't going to stay isolated for long. Its history became this relentless story of survival, as that wanderer's spirit was tested again and again, caught at the crossroads of some of history's most powerful empires. You can see the major shifts right here. The Kazakh Khanate rose from the ashes of the Mongol Empire, and that's where a distinct identity really started to form. But by the 1800s, the Russian Empire was expanding south, and it slowly swallowed up the Kazakh lands. This led directly to the Soviet era, a really defining chapter that lasted all the way until 1991, when Kazakhstan became the very last republic to break away from the collapsing USSR. And we just cannot overstate the impact of that Soviet period. This wasn't just some political change. It was a radical, often brutal, attempt to completely remake the land, the people, and the very soul of the nation. The first great test was a direct assault on the nomadic way of life. The forced collectivization of the 1930s was designed to shatter that tradition, forcing people onto these huge collective farms. The result was a totally catastrophic famine, a national tragedy that's known in Kazakhstan as the Ashurshilik. The human cost was just staggering. We're talking an estimated 1.5 million people. That's over a quarter of the entire Kazakh population at the time, who died from starvation and disease. It was a demographic catastrophe that left a deep, lasting scar on the national memory. But the trauma didn't stop there. Stalin basically used Kazakhstan's vast empty spaces as a dumping ground. Entire ethnic groups, Volga Germans, Chechens, Koreans, were forcibly deported here. Some of the most infamous gulag labor camps were built right on its soil. And the result of this social engineering was profound. By 1959, between the famine, executions, and forced migration, ethnic Kazakhs had actually become a minority in their own homeland. And finally, the land itself was scarred. For 40 years, the Soviet Union used a site called Semipalatinsk as its main nuclear proving ground. Hundreds of atomic bombs were detonated there, poisoning the earth and leaving behind a toxic legacy that affects people's health to this very day. And yet, out of this history of incredible tragedy, that spirit of resilience somehow endured. After 1991, a new nation started to forge its own path, drawing on its deep reserves of strength to build a modern identity from the ground up.
One of the most powerful symbols of this rebirth was the decision to move the capital back in 1997. They moved it from Almaty, which is nestled in the south, all the way to the centrally located city of Astana. It was a really bold statement, a declaration of a new beginning, a modern nation looking to the future, building a capital from scratch on the ancient steppe.
So what powered this new nation? Well, the answer was right there, lying beneath the ground. The very land that was once a source of so much vulnerability became its greatest asset. Kazakhstan's economy just exploded onto the scene as a Central Asian powerhouse, driven almost entirely by its colossal oil and gas reserves. And it's not just oil. The depth of its natural wealth is just mind-boggling. Kazakhstan is the world's #1 producer of uranium. It holds massive reserves of chromium, lead, and zinc, and it's a top 10 producer of coal, iron, and gold. It is, quite literally, a global treasure chest. With all this economic power came a really complex geopolitical reality. I mean, you're sandwiched between the giants of Russia and China, and you have significant interests from the West. So Kazakhstan adopted this very pragmatic foreign policy. They call it a multi-vector approach, and it's really the modern version of that ancient wanderer spirit, a delicate balancing act, navigating between powerful forces to keep its freedom and independence. And that brings us to today. After decades of stability under one leader, the country is now navigating a period of pretty big change, grappling with its past while trying to define a future where its vast wealth and strategic importance can serve all of its people. For nearly 30 years, Kazakhstan was basically synonymous with its first president, Nursultan Nazarbayev. But when he stepped down in 2019, it ushered in a new era under Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. This shift has been gradual, but it's significant, marked by political reforms and some pretty symbolic changes, like renaming the capital back to Astana, which was a clear signal that the nation was moving beyond its first chapter. That transition got a dramatic push forward in January 2022. Protests, which were sparked by fuel prices, quickly showed that there was a deep societal demand for much more significant political and economic change. It was a huge moment, and it really forced the new leadership to consolidate power and accelerate reforms, a sign that the Kazakh people were demanding a greater stake in their country's future. And so, this is where we're left. A nation that's defined by its vastness, shaped by a history of wandering and survival, and now standing at a new crossroads. It has navigated the fall of empires, and now it has to navigate its own complex transition in a turbulent world. For the land of the free wanderer, the fundamental question remains the same. Which path will it choose to walk next?